I'm going to start with putting my journals from the last few days onto YouTube so I have some continuity. Um, this first entry is from April 20th on a Friday. So this dream that I'm going to talk about happened technically Thursday night into Friday morning. I dreamt that it was the day before Easter. I had already arrived in Rochester to pick up my boyfriend Nate to go camping before visiting his family. I only remember that my mom was there too, possibly camping with Ken, her husband. And when we woke up and went to the bathroom, our stuff was magically packed. In other words, my mom did it. She's a magic packer. Then I went out to breakfast alone at some cafe. An older white man sat down across from me at a two-person table. There was a plastic menu between us, like the kind that sticks up in between. It's got like the one little part that sits on the table. Um, so it looks like an L, I guess. I was facing the rest of the restaurant, and he was facing me in the wall. It was a unique place, not a chain like Perkins, and it was nearly empty. A female waitress brought me my food. I think it was pancakes. Um, and I started to get the feeling that the man sat with me to hit on me. After all, most of the chairs were empty, and he sat with me. He was an older guy, so at first I didn't think he was, threatening or anything. At the very most, I thought he wanted to chat with some person he hadn't seen around in town before. And he said something to me that I don't remember, to which I replied, "Not a chance." And I didn't even look up at him when I said that. I'm assuming whatever he said was something to hit on me with, like, "Hey, you like what you see," or something like that. I don't know. But he left. And at the table to my right, some 30-year-old black man and a black woman he was sitting with turned their attention to me. He began flirting with me too, and that's why I said he was with a black woman, because I'm assuming if he was with, like, her girlfriend or something, she would get upset about it. But she didn't get upset, so it kind of confused me. But somehow I ended up at Nate's grandparents' house. His grandpa offered to give me a tour, but he called it something weird, like blah, blah, like just like total random sounds. And I came into their living room and saw a bunch of Christmas presents laying around, and apparently that didn't pose a question in my dream because it didn't seem weird that there were Christmas presents at Easter. But yeah. And there were also presents for my mom to give to me, which was especially odd because my mom has never met his grandparents and has never been there. Um, at this point, his grandma was apparently very upset with me because Nate had told her that we would leave her house by 5, but at this point it was already past 7, about 7:30. She kept giving me nasty looks and saying rude things, so I confided in my mom that I just wish she'd asked me to leave instead of being a jerk behind me, and I said something like treating me like a worthless piece of shit or something to that effect. And suddenly we heard wolves outside, and Nate and I and two of his other family members went to the window to investigate. They had like a sliding glass door next to two windows that were to the right of it, and I was standing by the door. Nate was to the right of me, and then the two other people were further to the right looking out the door. And um, suddenly, like, Nate decides to run out there and tell his grandparents, but instead of, going around through the house where it's safer, he went and ran outside past the. Sorry, I'm hearing feedback. Um, like past where we were hearing the wolves, and then he left the sliding glass door open. So I was like, "Oh my god, the wolves are gonna kill us!" So I like slammed the door shut behind him, so at least we all wouldn't die. And I guess we never saw the wolves, because that's what I wrote down. We never saw the wolves. Nate and I left soon after that, and as we were driving, my mom called me to tell me she was running into bad traffic on 94 and that we should take Ivy Road instead, which is made up. There is no Ivy Road, at least not near 94. Um, but apparently that road was closed, so we took the service road instead. and the road ended up running into an office building, and I went in there and was hearing two guys talking about my mom. And I barged in, and after a moment, they told me she had bad results from her FAFSA, so she wasn't going to get help, like, paying student loans. Um, and I was really confused how they knew her. I think I didn't know like why they knew about her FAFSA. But in any case, I kept driving home. My mom texted me and said, "Those idiots in the government need to learn how to read a damn FAFSA and get me the money I deserve." I was pretending that I didn't know what she was talking about because I didn't want her to know that like I was eavesdropping about stuff about her. Um, and then we arrived at somebody's house. I think it was one of my family members' house to play a weird version of Apples to Apples. It was something like Pokemon themed, or maybe like Digimon or something. And it was way too complex for me to understand because instead of like the two colors of cards, you know, the red and the green, there were four, and the color you kept in your hand changed depending on the situation. So I kept getting the wrong cards in my hands at the wrong time, and it wasn't sorted out into like adjectives and nouns. It was sorted into like categories, so you'd have both nouns and adjectives in your hand, and I didn't know like obviously that doesn't really work in apples to apples. You only lay down nouns to an adjective that's flipped. Anyway, so on my first hand, I played tradition, and I didn't win. Um, and I moved to another table to play a simpler version of the same game, although this one had poker chips involved somehow. Um, I think that was all I remember about that dream. Yeah, that is that for Friday 420.